Good morning and welcome to our Zoom worship service. We preface our service by acknowledging that the land on which our homes and our church were built was not uninhabited when European settlers arrived here with their ideas of conquest and ownership. For those of us who live in Moscow, Pullman, or other nearby communities, we live on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Shitshunsh, called the Coeur d'Alene. If you're joining us from another place, I encourage you to discover who inhabited or moved through the place where you now live in the times before colonization and genocide. We pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. And now let's join our voices together for our words of welcome, our unison chalice lighting, and our sung affirmation. So say with me, please, these words of welcome. Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, and however bumpy your life's journey, know that you are welcome here. We're hoping that everyone has a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's go ahead and light them now.
Hi, we're the Stewarts. I'm Lena.
I'm Julia.
And I'm Lex. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
The other day, I was thinking about the change in how we connect as a community since the beginning of the pandemic. It feels really different and, to be honest, a bit strange. Without our Sunday mornings where everyone could be in the same place and see each other's faces and get all the hugs we wanted, we've had to create a network of smaller nodes or pods. We're connecting for walks or coffee in groups of 2 or 3. We're connecting in small groups and committee meetings on Zoom. We're connecting by phone and email and text and Facebook, and it all feels a lot more dispersed than I'm used to, which was bringing up some anxiety in me. So as I was reflecting on all of this and breathing into my anxiety, a wave of reassurance washed over me, a sense that everything is okay. This is just what community needs to look like during the pandemic. And the fact that I'm not able to see and touch and be with all the folks I love every week doesn't mean I'm failing to do my job. Breathe. Next came an image, thin tendrils branching and coming together like roots. Or maybe a watershed. It reminded me a little of a phone tree, actually. How many of you are old enough to remember back when we had phone trees where one person calls 2 or 3 other people who each call 2 or 3 other people, and so on until everybody in the community gets a given message. So this new branching dispersed shape is a new shape for our community, and new and different feels strange. But as I continued to reflect on the image, I came to believe that it's also a sustainable shape, a healthy shape, a shape that will hold us and keep us connected until we can all be together in the same room again. So for today's service, we'll reflect on this model and explore both what it asks of us and the gifts it offers in return. For our meditation, I'd invite you to take out your piece of paper and crumple it up. Then, smooth it back out without tearing it, being very careful. And then relax in whatever way works best for you. Let's enter together into a time of reflection and meditation. Our physical bodies are made of blood and of bone, but ourselves, our identities, are created out of experiences and relationships. So I would invite you to begin by taking your writing utensil and choosing one of the creases in your paper, one that feels right and familiar, one that pleases your eye. Trace it with your pen or your pencil or your marker or your crayon, and let this line be the flow of your life. Now, cast your mind back to some of your earliest memories. Who were the people who loved you or taught you? Who were the people who made you you? What were the experiences that shaped you, formed you, set you on your path? Find a few creases in the top corner of your paper that intersect with the line you've already traced, and trace these new lines, maybe with a different color or maybe not. Let them represent these people and moments in your history. Now, imagine the people who shaped and influenced the people who flowed into your life. Imagine the events and happenings that led up to your foundational experiences. You can go back and back some more. Trace lines that lead into the lines that you've drawn and see the way it branches and intertwines. So it starts to look a little like this. Some of the lines that are tributaries may be your ancestors, intellectual or actual physical ancestors. Some of them may be the ancestors of the people who loved you, who helped make them who they are. Trace the lines out as far as feels right and good, and start to notice the way they intersect. Open your heart to the incredible complexity and interconnectedness of the past, all of the unlikely and miraculous moments that conspired to lead you to this identity, this moment. Then pick a point that's more or less in the middle of the page. Let this represent you here and now. What are the forces acting on you? Go ahead and draw them in. Who are the people you're connected to? Trace those lines too. Rivers flow downhill, branching and merging until they reach the sea. Let your mind wander and imagine the lives and experiences that you will touch and shift, that you'll join and influence downstream. What are your hopes and prayers for them? And trace lines to represent those connections, those hopes, those prayers, those intersections. In other words, reimagine your life as a watershed. There are so many points of connection, convergence, confluence. There are also places of disconnection and divergence, places where the water goes underground. What does the picture you've created of your life as a watershed have to offer you, to teach you? In the silence, let's contemplate and wonder together.
Like a river ever flowing onward, from the mountain to the sea. On we go where life takes us, like a river running free.
Like a river changing its direction, charting paths where it flows. Such is life, it is ever changing. No one knows where it may go. Like a river flowing out to the sea. Life keeps moving forward, like a river running free. Like a river flowing gently, till the wind-tossed waves we see. Life has storms, then the calm that follows. Like a river running free. Like a river flowing out to the sea. Like it's moving forward, like a river running free. Life keeps moving forward, like a river running free. Like a river running free.
Today I have two short readings for you. The first comes from Voyages, Canada's Heritage Rivers, and it's by Lynn Noel. It's hard to see a river all at once, especially in the mountains. Down on the plains, rivers run in their course as straightforward as time, channeled toward the sea. But up in the headwaters, a river isn't a point where you stand. In the beginnings of a river, you teeter on the edge of 100 tiny watersheds, where one drop of water is always tipping the balance from one stream to another. History changes with each tiny event, shaping an outcome that we can only fully grasp in hindsight. And that view changes as we move farther downstream. The second reading is by Paul Kraftful, and it's in a blog post that he published called Nourishing Upward Spirals. The watershed metaphor for me is that we, the people, that each one of us is a square inch of a large landscape, and each of us has power coming through us into the world. What do we do with that power? How much do we absorb to nourish creative actions, and how much do we let flow away to contribute to erosion downstream? Power comes through us to flow into the watershed. We have more power than we realize. Because power is diffused over millions of people, we don't realize how much power resides within the slopes. Part of the power of the watershed metaphor is to help us all grow more mindful of this power, and that each one of us has responsibilities for our contribution to it. The wise contribution is to help one another absorb ever more of our power, so that more possibilities emerge within the diverse watershed. At multiple points in my career, I've preached a sermon on the shape of community. In it, I share work that by the Alban Institute on church size dynamics. And I actually usually draw pictures of how connection and community work. So, some of you may remember me doing this in the sanctuary, but in smaller family-sized churches with 50 to 100 members, everyone knows everyone, matriarchs and patriarchs serve as gatekeepers, welcoming people into the community and introducing them around. Then you get pastoral size when you get up to about 100 or 150 people. The minister comes along and lives at the hub, and the minister's job is to know everyone and to be a point of connection and communication. But human beings, even working full-time, can't sustain more than 150 relationships. So there's another transition to what's called program-sized, and at program size, the community organizes into small groups, smaller circles, both formal and informal, and the minister invests the bulk of their time in relationships with the leaders of each of those smaller circles so that information can flow freely. Churches can grow with this model up to about 250 or 300 people, at which point the structure shifts to a corporate size model, which is way too complicated for me to draw. As you can probably tell, my artistic skills are pretty rudimentary. So this is what they taught me in seminary, and it's what I taught in turn to help people understand the shifts that have to take place as churches get bigger, as communities get bigger. Now though, for the time being at least, it's totally useless. The pandemic is by necessity shifting how we connect, not just in the church community, but for all of humanity. For safety's sake, the circles of people we connect with in 3 dimensions have shrunk drastically, and those circles expand and contract with risk level, which is a little weird. Meanwhile, we do our best to connect virtually, but it's not really the same connecting virtually. What I find is that for people who I know in real life and feel connected to in real life, I can maintain a sense of connection to the two-dimensional representation on my screen. But I find it's harder to develop that sense of deep, authentic connection with someone I haven't been in a room with. It's also difficult to maintain that sense of connection over time, even with people who I already have had a deep connection with in the before times. And I'm not talking about anything cognitive or intellectual here. I'm talking about the set of physiological responses we have when we're with someone we care about and trust. I'm talking about mirror neurons. I'm talking about the way serotonin and oxytocin and dopamine are released into our system when we're physically with another human we care about who cares about us in return. I'm talking about the ways we co-regulate. One of the things that used to happen on Sunday morning when we were able to gather together in our beautiful sanctuary and sing together and smile at one another and give and receive hugs is that our nervous systems settled down. Again, this wasn't a cognitive process, it was a physiological one. There's a lot of wisdom in these soft animal bodies of ours. And I know I will never again take for granted the gift of being able to look out and see all of you sitting next to one another, beaming kindness and goodness and love. Oh, I miss it so much. But as we transitioned in response to the pandemic, the shape of the community shifted. And the gift that I'm grateful for today is the awareness that this new shape is also powerful and beautiful and effective and sustainable. And I think it looks a lot like these watershed maps that we drew during the meditation. In twos and threes and small pods, teams of people who have been vaccinated, we still connect, we still flow together. It's not what was, and it's not necessarily what we want, but we are able to get what we need. So I'd invite you to take just a moment and think about the people in the church community you feel most connected to. I'm guessing it may be a shorter list than it would have been in the before times, maybe even as short as one or two names, but maybe longer. And maybe it's people that you bumped into while you were out for a walk, or maybe it's your check-in buddy, or someone that you know you can call if you're having a hard day. I'm relatively certain that everyone has someone and that we're all still connected or plugged in somehow. And if you don't feel that, if you don't feel a sense of connection, I hope you'll send me an email or give me a call and let me know. I don't want anyone to fall through the cracks. But here's my ask. This transition for me involves letting go of my role as communication and connection hub. My list, for safety's sake, is shorter than it used to be. So, will you occasionally just let me know how you're doing? Will you let me know, especially if someone you are connected to isn't doing well and could use some additional care and support? I need the information to flow back uphill so that the community can respond to people who are struggling. I actually think, though, that this new watershed shape is both healthy and sustainable if we can learn to lean into its strengths. For example, fewer connections mean we can give more time and attention to each one. Our energy doesn't get dispersed. We can harness it to nourish creative actions, as the author of our second reading put it. We can go deeper with one another. We can be more honest and open and get down to the heart of the matter. The bonds that are created during this time of dispersal and dislocation, I think, are going to be strong and lasting as we go into the future. There's also room for subtlety and delicacy. When we are functioning as a large group, whether we're making decisions together or designing programming, there is by necessity a sort of homogenization that needs to happen. We look for the best approximation, the best fit. When we're in smaller groups, individual needs and preferences can determine the shape, the course of events. So one of the things that's happening is I know I am learning to get a lot clearer about what I want and need. I'm figuring out how to set better boundaries with more skill, how to stay in touch with my own deep wisdom, and I'm offering myself the same fierce compassion I've always tried to offer everyone else. So my shape is becoming more authentic, and I'm able to find my way with a little more integrity. And the thing of it is, during this time of dispersal, we can't go along with the crowd when there's no crowd to go along with. There's also a way that this new shape allows love and energy to go to the place where it's most needed, to find the driest ground or the place with the greatest hurt. Our circulatory system also looks a lot like a watershed, and I think about the way our body marshals resources and defenses to help us heal. I got to thinking about this because I was reading an article earlier this week about the inflammatory response. Apparently, when we take too many nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, we decrease blood flow to the area of injury, which means it actually takes longer for us to heal and recover. So one of the things that I've seen happening during pandemic times is that when there's a problem identified, whether it's in the community or in the wider world, the power and attention and generosity are able to flow right to where it's needed. We have a better sense of where that is because the routines and habits that filled our time before have largely dropped away. There's a sensitivity inherent in living just now. It's kind of like walking around with our nerve endings exposed, and it's uncomfortable, kind of like the inflammatory response is uncomfortable. But I think it also allows for healing in a way that denial and busyness precluded before. Releasing the metaphor for just a moment, the fact that it's safer to be outdoors than in means that we're often making deep connections outside and reaping the benefits, physical, psychological, and spiritual, of being present to the natural world. I got to thinking that this may be part of why things feel so much harder when the smoke is bad or it's too hot to go out. That and the fact that we're being smacked in the face with the reality of global climate change and the likelihood that our future here on the Palouse is going to continue to get hotter and smokier. In any event, we've been shaken out of our accustomed ways of gathering and our accustomed ways of being, which is disorienting, but it also gives us an opportunity to find new ways that are simpler and maybe even more humane. We know that the well-worn channel of consumer culture is eroding our collective well-being. We know that the carbon-based economy isn't sustainable. It could be that this new shape is giving us the freedom to experiment with new ways of not just being connected, but new ways of being all together. It feels strange to me to not be holding the threads of communication and connection of this community in the same ways I used to, but there's a freedom in it as well. And perhaps the greatest gift is the opportunity to witness the strength and integrity of those individual connections. To maintain and deepen our connections, to strengthen our community in this new shape as it exists, all we have to do is let the connections flow and occur naturally. If we miss someone, we follow through on that longing. We call or email or arrange for a walk or to meet for a cup of coffee. If we're worried about someone, we check in on them. If we're feeling a need for love and support, we reach out to the person who feels like the best one who could meet that need. Water finds a way. It flows naturally, and we can too. I've learned in the last year and a half that the work of the beloved community isn't programming and doesn't depend on one central hub. It occurs in moments, in experiences, in emotions. Beloved community is built out of kindness and love, offered and reciprocated in hundreds, if not thousands, of one-on-one interactions. This is a powerful insight and important, and I hope I can hold on to it going forward. So, may we all just go with the flow. May we flow together and apart as our spirit and our safety request. May information and caring and love flow freely among and between us. And may we remember, even as we find our unique path, that all water flows downhill toward the sea. Progress is inevitable, inexorable, and whatever barriers we encounter, we will find a way around, over, under, or through, so long as we stay together and go with the flow. So be it, and so may it be. Our closing reading is The Journey by Linda Hogan. The mouth of the river may be beautiful. It doesn't remember the womb of its beginning. It doesn't look back to where it's been or wonder who ahead of it polished the rough stones. It is following the way in its fullness, now like satin, now cresting, waters meeting, kindred, to travel gathered together. All knowing it flows one way, shining orange shadows. And me, the animal I ride, wants to drive forward, its longing not always my own, of overrunning its banks and bounds, edgeless, spilling along the way. Because as I forget, it knows everything is before it. Please say with me now the words to embody the flame. We extinguish our chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place, and may it guide our way until we are together again. So, dear ones, may we go with the flow. May we handle the barriers, the bumps, the things that become obstacles. May we find our way around, under, and through. Above all, may we continue to flow together, valuing and maintaining the connections that sustain us and give us strength. I miss you. I love you. Go in peace